Self-made. You just affiliated. I built it ground up. You bought it renovated. Let's go. Welcome back to House Rich, the real estate show where we help millennials figure out where do I get started in real estate and how to build generational wealth. Today's topic is some things you should look for when buying a new construction home. Today's intro is sponsored by Miami-based philosopher William Leonard Robert III. Let's go. All right, so my wife and I last week were out picking up stuff at Target. You know, it was a little bit late. We thought, hey, let's go get something to eat. And we're looking around, not to stereotype certain genders, but one gender has a harder time figuring out what to eat than the other. And so we figured out finally, like, hey, we want a burger. And so we looked around, we found a burger place that my wife really liked. It was a restaurant. But when we got there, or when we put out the information online to, secure our order, it was like it was an hour and a half wait. And so my thing is like, okay, we really like burgers. This burger is probably a tasty burger, but I personally would rather wait for an okay or above average burger for 30 minutes than to wait an hour and a half for a supposedly great burger. And so I say that to when you're buying a new construction home, like the timeline is one of a very, very important thing. And so especially since like this home most likely should not be your dream home, or maybe it is your dream home, you're building a new construction home, but the timeline is very important to understand, because one thing with the timeline is the builder can hold you accountable for closing on time, but you really can't hold the builder accountable for not closing the home on time. So like they can tell you, hey, it's going to take 4 to 6 months to close this home, but there could be all sorts of delays, and some legit, some not legit, like lumber shortages. Oh, it rained a lot. Now it's going to take longer to lay the foundation or something like that. So typically you're more likely to have delays than for the home to finish quickly. And so the timeline is something you really need to understand from the builder. And more importantly, like, what is the timeline on the other homes that you have built in the area? So you're telling me 4 to 6 months, but show me a comparable sale that actually finished in 4 to 6 months. So if you're telling everybody 4 to 6 months, but it's taking 6 to 8 months, that's something you need to factor into your home buying decision, especially if like you're renting, because you need to figure out what's going on with your lease, when you're moving out there, etc. And so really nothing is real until you probably get to within like the 60-day period, because that's when the home is pretty much almost complete. And about 60 days out is when you'll get like the timeline from the realtor. And that's honestly 60 to 90 days is when you really start your loan process. So you get pre-approved before that, but when you start the actual evaluation process of re-looking at your credit, re-looking at your income documents, re-looking at your assets, that really happens around the 60 to 90-day time frame, because you do pre-qualify 6 to 8 months before the home is ready, because the builder has to make sure, hey, this person is at least a legit prospective renter. But the actual, you requalify again basically at that 60 to 90-day time frame. So another important thing to analyze are the amenities and the associated HOA dues, or basically what are your HOA dues doing for you. So like, I'm in a community right now, you can see there's a lot of open green space. There's a community center back there. There's a playground right back there. There's a pool back over there. And so there are HOA dues in this community. And like, so it's like, hey, are the amenities in this community commensurate with the HOA dues? Because you don't want a bunch of high HOA dues and then stuff that is not in the community, or equally as important, stuff in the community that you are not even paying for. And so some communities have HOAs, some don't. If you're in like what's called like a master plan community, you'll kind of know it when you see it. That's basically a community where they're building like a whole from scratch and there's a whole bunch of homes. That's a community that pretty much is going to have an HOA. And so you obviously can buy a new construction home as well. You see like when neighborhoods are being gentrified basically, those neighborhoods may or may not have HOA. So that's something you want to check on and see what your dues are going towards. And also you want to know like if they'll let you know like how much money is actually in the HOA fund. Because what you don't want to happen is you're in a HOA, and this happens a lot of times with condos, and there may be like a big renovation coming up, like the whole condo building needs a roof or something like that. And so HOA dues may be like, $200, $300 a month. But now there's not a bunch of money in the HOA kitty, but we need to pay, $50,000 to get the roof done. And so now the HOA dues go up from $300 to $600, $700 a month. And so that's something you need to be aware of too, is like the strength of the HOA and how much money they actually have there. And so, yeah, there goes the nice part. Let's talk comps and comparable sales, because typically there are none. So I'm at a property right now, and if you look behind me, visual, if you're on the podcast, open field, right? Open field. Those are where comparable sales or eventually comps will be, but there's none right now. So this home right here is priced based on what the builder thinks it should be priced at. And so they probably had to look at homes in the surrounding communities and base the price of this home on those homes. But it's a whole entirely different community, right? And so it's just a good guess for the builder and for you thinking that you're getting in with good value. So one of the pros of getting into a property when there's no other comparable sales is that you maybe get a home very undervalued. And so what happens is the builder sets the home prices at $300,000. If the homes sell, quick enough, they continue to raise and raise and raise the prices until they kind of slow down on the increase in sales. So that's one of the pros and cons of getting a new construction property, is there are no comparable sales, but there are no comparable sales. And so you may be able to get a real good deal if you get that property before kind of the prices start to escalate. One of the cons could be, once again, if you're trying to sell that property. And so, because you got to think about it, you're competing against brand new homes when you're trying to sell your home. You're competing against the home just being completely fresh and brand new. You're competing against those builder incentives as well. And so think about it from your perspective. If you could, let's just say like a car, right? If you could buy a car brand new, the brand new car was $10,000 and the used car was $10,000. Like, which one would you buy? You're going to buy the brand new property, right? And so that's the same thing when it comes to a home, is you're competing against the brand new properties and the builder incentives. So another thing to think about when you're buying a new construction home is what that timeline is for the entire community. So if it's going to be like a 10, 15-year timeline, they're going to be 1,000 homes. You're going to be competing against brand new homes for 10 to 15 years, but you do have the equity as well. So pro and a con. Another important thing to look at is like, hey, does this community have like any special features that make it stand out from maybe other communities in the area? Because as I always say, you should be thinking about your resale or re-rent value, unless it's your dream or your forever home. And so most likely it was not be your dream or forever home. So you should be thinking, hey, is there something cool in this neighborhood that somebody else would want to, come and buy my home or rent it, versus maybe the other master plan communities all around. Like where I live, there's probably like 10 master plan communities around my community. And so like this is, I think it's a cool feature. It's like a resort style pool. It's like within the woods. So if you listen to the podcast, this may be a little more visual episode, but there's like a resort style pool behind me with like amongst a lot of trees, and there's like a lake behind it and so forth. And so special features, new home or pre-existing home, are something you want to look at, because as always, when you're purchasing a home, you should be thinking about what would a renter want, or you should be in this home for 4 to 5 years anyways, because you need to be thinking about the resale value. And once again, we don't know what's going to happen with the economy, so you should never be planning to be in a home for 1 or 2 years just because home prices have increased drastically the last 1 to 2 years. So think long term, 4 to 5 years is your game plan. So another thing with new construction you want to look at is builder incentives, especially now with the market turning at least a little bit towards the buyers. It's still a seller's market, I believe, but it's like, hey, what incentives is the builder giving you to purchase a home in their community? And it's very important because a lot of times there are huge incentives builders will give you. So if you think about it like this, if a builder buys like a plot of land for like, I don't know, $50,000 or something like that, they build a home and now they're selling the home for $400,000, but it took them $200,000 to build, right? $250,000, $400,000, $150,000 profit. I'm not sure if that's math, but just throwing those numbers out there. And so they have a lot of leeway when it comes to selling that home. And so a lot of times they'll give you huge incentives to go with them because they have that big spread, which is different than when you're buying like a pre-existing home. Like that, the seller is just looking at what they bought the home for versus what they bought the home, what the home is worth now, basically. And so they don't have that big a spread, so they're not going to give you incentives to buy their home that are like $15,000, $20,000. They're not going to give you any incentives to use their special lender because they actually own the lender. So that doesn't exist when you're buying a pre-existing home, but they're often deep disc, and I call it discounts, air quotes, because the builders just make up the price, honestly, when you're buying a new construction home. But it's important to know that you don't always have to go with that lender anyways. And so you can actually maybe leverage the incentives from the builder's lender in order to get a better quote from a lender you want to go to. And so see previous episodes on how to actually accurately compare quotes. Thank you for listening to the show. If you want to connect with other listeners and also dive deeper into topics, as well as attend live trainings every Tuesday at 8 p.m., click the link down below and join the First Time Homebuyer School. See you inside. So another important thing to understand is what's going to happen with the property around your property. So this area behind me, let me step back a little bit. This huge field right here, when we first looked at this neighborhood, it was plush fields of, green grass, trees, etc. Now it's a little bit trashy and junky, and that's because they're building new apartments right there. And so that's important to know, because if you purchased a home that's right over there and you were thinking, hey, I'm going to sit on the back of my porch and, wake up to coffee and green, lush fields, you were greatly mistaken, and it could potentially negatively impact your property values, because folks probably do not want to wake up and look at the back of an apartment building. And so to me, it's kind of common sense to an extent that something will be built in that area. Because think about it, like if you paid $300,000 for your 50-foot lot, there's no scenario where the builder is just going to leave 5, 6, 7 acres of land just wide open just so it can be visually appealing to you. That makes really no sense, right? And so one, you need to find out like who owns that land, because it can be owned by the builder or someone else, right? And so if the builder owns that land, at least what they'll try to do is do something with the land that will enhance the property values of the neighborhood, because they want to protect their big investment, which is the 1,000 homes in that community. If it's owned by somebody else, they're just going to do something to enhance their pockets. They don't really care about the neighborhood behind them. They're just trying to get the most value out of that the land that they purchased. So the builder tries to get value too, but like I said, they're going to try to balance the pros and cons of what's going on there. And so you need to figure out how the property is zoned and who owns it. So it can be zoned commercial, mixed use, or residential. And so, or it could be a green belt. So a green belt is a place where nothing else will be built due to some sort of environmental issues. And so if it's a green belt, you're probably good. If it's any other thing, even if it's residential and you're like, hey, this is going to build more houses, it can be rezoned for the best use of the builder. So don't get fooled by the initial classification of the property unless it's a green belt. And I've seen some people claim they've had green belts changed. I don't think that's true, but I guess you can look that up. But I've heard folks say that the green belt can actually be changed. So I guess maybe if the builder has enough money, they can sway the politicians or something like that. So back at the playground. So another important thing is to figure out like what the school system will be. A lot of times in new construction neighborhoods, they will build a school, but that'll be like an elementary school. So you have to figure out like, hey, what's going to happen with the school system that my kids will be eventually going into? Because honestly, no one cares what elementary school your kid went to, but like high schools and the programs in those high schools have a lot of impact on your kid's decision or ability to go to the college they may want to. Sorry, the wind was getting a little crazy there when I was talking about the school system. So the school system is important to know where your kids are going like in real time as far as the new high school. Because if there's like a new construction neighborhood, if there's going to be like 1,000 homes, that could be another 1,000 kids or so. And so it's important to know like where the people are going in the future as well, because that high school will need to be built most likely and does not have a rating. So that's something to consider as well. Forgot to do an outro. As always, if you enjoyed the episode, like it, share with a friend, and leave a review. That helps my voice get out to more people just like you. And buy land, rumor has it, they're not making any more of it.